2, 1.
Do we have? Yeah.
Oh, no, my bad. Good morning, everybody. I got the small little announcement before we get to our show here. Look out on Tuesday, October 23rd. It got Marketing to Millennials, how the skim went from a startup to a digital sensation, a panel discussion that's going to be happening on campus at the Spelman Faculty Reception Room. It's a great event. You're going to have the head of product, head of marketing, head of research, head of user acquisition for the skim there. And I know that for you journalists out there that, Professor Bard has you reading the skim. So this is a great opportunity to see what it's all about. Look out for that. Again, that's on Tuesday, October 23rd at 7 p.m. See if you can make your way over there. And now back onto our show.
I'm Steve. I'm Aaron.
And this is
And hello.
Welcome back.
Yes, it's been a week since we came on with a disastrous start.
Oh yeah, but now we're back and we kind of got our stuff together.
Oh yeah, definitely. And now, so last week we talked about what did we talk about? We talked
Smash Ultimate,
and seeing how that goes. Now, on our past show, we talked about movies and video games. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be switching back and forth. Maybe it'll be games, or movies.
We'll see. It's on a week-to-week basis style. So we'll tell you what you'll get next week, and you can look forward to it. So, but this week, our topic of discussion is, and you'll probably see this if you see the title, movies people love to hate, underrated films that we believe are better than the public consensus. So,
oh yeah, like. One thing that I absolutely hate discussing is about movies that, say, if I like a certain movie and somebody else's, we have this huge debate and like
going back and forth. We actually just had one.
Yes, literally before we
we started like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Basically, I don't know. Like, we all have different tastes. I know for me, what I look for in a movie is a movie that is both fun, comedic, and also has great action scenes. And what's something that you look for in like a film?
What I look for, likable, strong characters that I can relate to, or that I can sympathize with or follow along with. A good villain, if it's that kind of story, a good villain that you feel like is actually impactful to the story. And I like lighthearted comedy here and there in my films as well, as long as it's it's not overused, that kind of thing.
No, I completely agree. So, starting off with that, let's start off with our number one underrated movie. Aaron, you want to start it off?
All right. So my number one underrated movie was, and I actually just recently saw this past summer, was Lincoln. So I'll agree that not everybody's a big history buff. They're not into all these old Civil War war stories, everything.
And especially this movie is definitely geared towards those kinds of people, made for being a 3-hour movie.
3 hours long. I'll admit, the first time I watched it, I did fall asleep. My mom fell asleep. It isn't a movie for everybody. But after, this past summer, I watched it again because, it's interesting. I do like my history, and, now I don't know enough about Abraham Lincoln, seeing as he is the one who signed the 13th Amendment and everything. So I watched it again, and I thought it was quite good. In terms of, I think where a lot of people fall off with it, of course, is the fact that you're going through so much history, and it's not your normal action type movie, that it's a lot of talking, and it's a lot of talking about very serious topics, and they use a lot of lingo, and it makes it difficult to follow along at parts. So you fall asleep or you get disinterested very fast.
Which, yes, a lot of people did, like one of those people being me.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is it definitely brings you into the world and like the time period that it was.
Yeah, you really do feel like you're back in the Civil War times, and like the early 18th century or the late 18th century, during that time. And it makes you, I'll be honest, my favorite part about it was following along with Lincoln's story, but it was also seeing how the people around Lincoln reacted to the things he did, or how the legislative bodies and the Republicans and the Democrats, how they argued back and forth and how they talked about the other side. You never saw, in some cases, like for example, the Confederacy versus the Union. You never really got the Confederacy, seeing their side of everything. You did get parts where you saw their leaders talking and their groups talking, but for the most part, a lot of what you understood about the Confederacy was that there was this force of oppression, and that, how were we going to combat them? How are we going to debate against them? How are we going to get what we want, or the most of what we can? And one standpoint throughout the entire movie that I think describes Lincoln's character perfectly is that he is a man of like zero to little compromise. If he wants something, he is not going to not stop until he gets it, because he wants his presidency.
Right?
Presidency. Yeah, to be remembered as one that was effective, to be remembered as one that was impactful on history. And so far as going to ratify the 13th Amendment was he made a clear point that he had to make sure that these people were freed, that slavery was outlawed. And it's a key point throughout the entire film that he never lets you forget. And who's the actor?
It's David A. Lewis.
Yeah, Daniel Lewis does a fantastic job as being that character. Especially, you get to see more. I'm pretty sure this is taken from a lot of memoirs. You get to see more of Lincoln's private life, what his wife and kids were like, and it really lets you get invested. Now it is a movie that you do have to pay a lot of attention to, and because if you don't, you're gonna get lost really fast. But once you get into it, if you're interested enough and you want to pay attention to it, it does not disappoint. And from tackling every issue, it tackled a lot of major issues that Lincoln had throughout his presidency, mainly being the Civil War, ratifying the 13th Amendment, things like that. And another major plot point is trying to get the Republicans to be on his side, to choose. I mean, not the Republicans. I'm sorry, because Lincoln was he was a Republican. Yeah.
What? No. Really?
Yeah, he was actually, because what happened is that the ideals of the North and the South switched after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
So the South was Democratic and the North was Republican. That's something I think a lot of people tend to forget. But one of the big things is that they're trying to get a lot of the Republicans to be on their side, and the Republicans were heavily. I mean, no, I have it wrong. I am so sorry. The North, it was Democratic, and the Republicans were in the South, but the Republicans in the South believed in, the Democrats believed in like keeping their slaves as well.
Yeah.
So I might be getting this messed up, but
it's a lot of history.
Yeah, it's a lot of history, and I'm not a big enough history buff as I once was to be able to remember everything. I just remember specifically that a lot of the movie was Lincoln trying to convince his party members to be able to get them to want to agree to the 13th Amendment. And one of the most key parts in the movie was just when they're all sitting in that room trying to ratify the 13th Amendment. You have everybody agreeing and everyone saying, and it's strange because it's like one of the most hype moments of the film. But if you don't know what they're talking about, you're just like, yeah. What are they saying? What is this going on? But this is cool,
Now, after you telling us all the good things that you find about the movie, stuff. Now, one thing that I definitely have to disagree with you as looking at as an underrated movie, because it definitely was not, because it was nominated and I believe it won an Academy Award.
That's true. I think I was going based off of public consensus as to how the film how people average people watch it, but in terms of a film itself, is renowned as being fantastic,
and especially with Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. Like, he looks the part and he definitely acts the part.
He acts the part, he looks the part, he sounds the part. Like, I'll admit, his voice is just wonderful to listen to, because you get that air of what people think Lincoln was like. Nobody knows. Well, people do know, but now in this day and age, having records of what Lincoln sounded like it's how you're hard pressed to find it. So most historians just go off they judge the way he talked by the way he wrote. How he writes things, his memoirs, his speeches, how they were written down. Of course, you have his famous whatchamacallit after the Civil War, the Gettysburg Address. That was one of the key points. It got really emotional towards the end after obviously Lincoln's assassination. One of the most beautiful parts, I think, was that when they were playing the Gettysburg Address during that entire ending section, which is this beautiful music going over it. It's a slow movie. It's a slow burn. But it's, for those people who like this slow type of history where you learn more about a character, where it's like characterization. If you need a movie that's not like action in your face every 10 seconds, the only action I think that there was that one scene I mentioned where they're ratifying the 13th Amendment, and of course the moment where Lincoln is assassinated. But that's not even really shown. All that's shown is that I think John Wilk walks into the booth, and then the play is stopped at a different theater. Like they're at a different theater where I think his son or somebody else is there, and somebody comes on stage. They're like, the president's been shot, and everybody's kind of like, what? It's not the same theater. So it gives you this impact of like, we know this event happened, we know it's coming,
but you weren't expecting.
Right? How are they going to handle it, especially after it just jumps straight after the 13th Amendment is ratified to Lincoln's death, and also the unconditional surrender of the South. And it's just like, it's such an impactful film as to that point that I got there and I was just kind of course it wears on you. It's 3 hours long. So I'm watching it, I'm just like, oh man, that last scene where they ratified 13th Amendment was amazing. How are they going to handle Lincoln's death? And then I watched it, I'm just like, this movie's fantastic. I love the characterization. Well, his wife specifically, I think, also does a fantastic job. As in most of the memoirs, they describe her as at times being like hysterical, and they did disagree, and they show that discourse. Their marriage was not like the happiest of marriages because they lost one of their sons at the time, and it's always just like this back and forth between. You see, sometimes she's like distressed and worried about all these different things, and it's great. It's a great watch. I think it doesn't get the credit it deserves. It got the credit it deserves.
No, it definitely.
Like, the film community thinks this movie is fantastic, and I totally agree. But I think for the average person, you're not going to be scrolling through your guide and see Lincoln and be like, "Hey, let's watch Lincoln like tonight." You know, that's a film.
Yeah. But no, I completely agree with all the points that you brought up. I will probably not watch Lincoln because it's a very long movie.
I'll admit one thing, it's too long. 3 hours is a long time to sit down. I know, like a lot of old movies, you go back and watch any martial arts movie, they're way longer than they should be, man.
Yeah.
But it's like, it makes sense for this kind of movie. It's
Definitely.
Just for your average movie goer nowadays, you're not going to want to sit in a theater for 3 hours.
I mean, looking at like a biopic talking about like all this history that was going on, obviously it had to be a long enough movie.
Yeah, to cover everything in it. And to be honest, it doesn't cover everything of Lincoln's presidency. It only covers like the 2 key points, but you can't.
No,
you can't. So we've been sitting there for 15 hours watching this movie, just trying to get through everything he's ever done. But I think it was a fantastic movie. I definitely give it a watch, but only, like a long time after I watch it a second. It's not the kind of movie that you see one day and then you can see it the next day. We're like, yeah, I'll sit down and watch it again.
No, yeah. But this is probably a good time to stop the segment. We'll come back and we'll talk about mine.
Yeah, we're gonna get to Steve's first pick. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.